Hey guys, how's it going? So I've had a couple of questions about Renko, and I thought I'd do a really quick video because it's much easier just to sort of point and draw and doodle stuff um, on a video as opposed to write a thread or anything about it. So yeah, here goes nothing. All Renko is it's a chart type, right? You're probably all familiar with candlestick charts, and you know that all they are is time on the x-axis and price on the y-axis. Yeah. You'll notice that this is currently covering my whole screen, and we've got a fair bit of chop in here. We've got a nice little ranging period, blah blah blah. All Renko is trying to do is aggregate these movements up into boxes, and each box is defined by a certain size, right? And there are two methods for calculating that size. So watch what happens when I go to the Renko chart, bearing in mind this is currently my whole screen. It moves all the way over here, and it's taken a lot of the chop out. Now, the reason that it's done that is because it's saying for every $500 movement, which is just a number that I've put in for now to demonstrate, paint a brick, right? And that's all it's doing, is it's taking choppy price action or ranging price action, and instead of leaving that as a long period of time, it just plops in one brick. So you'll notice that this is quite distorted. The time periods don't quite scale. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, generally on traditional calculation, where you define an input and you define a box size, you do anywhere between 0.5% and 2% of the current price. So let's say Bitcoin is $20,000 right now. 200 would probably be a good, i.e. 1%, would be a good value to use. And again, you can kind of see it's cleaned up a bit of that chart, not as much as before, but certainly more than a candlestick chart, right? And the other thing to bear in mind is that this does change by time frame that you're on. So if you're on a 4-hour chart, obviously it's got less movement than a 15-minute chart, which is going to look a little bit more choppy, right? So Renko typically works better on higher time frames. So again, 3-day, very, very clear, very, very clean. Weekly, even cleaner from a trend perspective. Do you see what I mean? Like this is just basically saying that you should have been shorting from the 21st of March 2022, right? Because it is just down only. Yeah. So that's traditional. The other method is ATR. Now what ATR is, and its default period or length is 14. Now let's go to the 4-hour, something a bit more useful. So 14, so all it's doing is to calculate your brick size, is it's saying there's your volatility, my average true range is this, for 14 periods the average is that, whatever it might be, right? And it's using that to determine your box size. Now, I personally prefer traditional on Bitcoin, but for altcoins that all have a very different denomination of dollar value, so if you go to AVAX, for example, and you're on traditional, you will just get an error with a 200 box size because AVAX is only $17, right? Whereas if you flip to ATR, you'll see that AVAX prints nicely, and it's essentially using 0.75. So how can you use Renko? I mean, a couple of things are levels. So defining cleaner levels, this isn't particularly clean, but it's an example nonetheless. Of potential levels, so you can see where price is interacting and rebounding, etc., etc. Another one is use it to generate divergences between momentum indicators like the awesome oscillator and price. So like here, for example, is a fairly decent div. The other one is just simply confirming kind of strength of trend. So you can use it with something like a guppy on a daily time frame. You can use it with, which is essentially again says you should have been shorting AVAX since the 6th of April. You can use it with like MK ribbons. Again, it's the same kind of thing. They're all just EMAs or trend tools, but it's just helpful high time frame context for what you are trading and taking out the noise of time. One of the big downsides of Renko is that it repaints. So whilst this chart looks like this today, in a few days' time, when the ATR value is essentially changed because the price, the current price action for AVAX has changed, it might have done this or something absolutely wild, it will then repaint all the history. So if you are using it, be sure to take a copy of your view of it at the time, because it will change retrospectively. It's one of the kind of big downsides. I mean, another one of the big downsides, I think, for me is that it's good for high time frame trend, momentum, etc. But lower time frame, it's quite difficult to put to use as okay, here's where I'm going to put my stop, etc., etc., and actually managing the trade through. So good contextually, good for high time frame. Lower time frame, particularly trading view, isn't overly helpful. But yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. So in summary, it's just price, not price over time. So instead of this typical candlestick, which is that, you're just looking at price. Two ways of defining it. You've got traditional and you've got ATR. Traditional is a number you type in, usually 0.5 to 2%, and ATR is typically 14 and just calculates it automatically, better for alts. And that's it. Any questions? Let me know. Cheers.